Whoa, 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 whoa. There's still plenty of meat on that bone. Now you take this home, throw it in a pot, add some broth, a potato. Baby, you got a stew going.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talking Smack, where we talk superheroes, movies, animation, comics, and much, much more. I'm your host, Josh Scar, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Alex. Alex, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. I'm enjoying the spring weather, and I'm excited for a lineup because you know what? I am curious about what you doing.
And because it is a What You Doing episode, we are making it an ensemble, and we are, of course, joined by Matt. This is one of his staple episodes. Matt, I know you're not doing great, but how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm a little sick, but I'm powering through. How about you guys? How's it going?
Fan-freaking-tastic.
I'm doing okay, but as you guys heard with the intro music, I'm a little sad because we did have the passing of Carl Weathers this past weekend, or at least the news of his passing. I think he passed away sometime mid last week. The news of his passing hit me kind of hard. I wasn't really expecting it. He's not a guy that like I followed his career or anything, but he's a guy that brought me a lot of joy that I didn't really realize until thinking about it with his passing. Cause like, yeah, he's in Mando. There's a little bit of recency bias with you do the wavy hand thing, baby, do the wavy hand thing. But like, I was looking back on his career and he was so versatile. He never seemed like a guy that let his ego get the better of making good sound acting and business decisions. If you would have told 12-year-old Josh who watched Happy Gilmore like once a week for the entire summer of 1996 that Chubbs was also Apollo Creed, like I probably wouldn't have believed you because it's such a vastly different character, especially nowadays when you have characters like Dwayne The Rock Johnson who refuse to look stupid.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy who was an equal with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger in respective roles in movies. And like while he like lost in Rocky 2 and he died in The Predator, or I'm sorry, in Predator. The Predator is a different movie. It's still astounding to me that Action Jackson, the guy who came on to Arrested Development almost kind of on a whim because he wanted to make sure they weren't going to portray him as the Predator and the Rocky guy. Instead, he had this idea of like, what if I'm a down on my luck actor who's just trying to penny pinch? And it's so out of the norm for what the Hollywood action star is. And I was like, man, we did not appreciate this guy while we still had him. At least not in the way I think he truly deserved.
For by all accounts, especially since the news of his passing came out, he's a very like nice guy, very like good to work with, and obviously, like you mentioned, he was very versatile and he was willing to make fun of himself because on Arrested Development he is playing a comedic version of himself. It's not like Carl Weathers playing actor Joe Schmo. He's playing Carl Weathers. Obviously, like I said, exaggerated, but it is, that's him being willing to kind of roll with it and laugh at himself a little bit, which is nice.
Yeah, because guys in that action vein, especially from 1990 to now, they're very protective of their personas and what they can do. And like we've seen it where they can kind of poke fun of themselves or they take on comedic roles. Like The Rock had the Tooth Fairy, uh Vin Diesel had the nanny or whatever, that the babysitter or whatever that one was called. Arnold Schwarzenegger had the Junior movie, and he's done other comedic things, but like for the most part, they're very protective of their personas. Where Carl Weathers was just like, if it sounds like a good idea, let's give it a shot. It just the news of his passing didn't hit me kind of the same as Chadwick Boseman, because Chadwick Boseman was in his mid 40s, where Carl Weathers was in his late 70s. So like that's not unsurprising, but still just to wake up one day or open Twitter one afternoon and like, oh, Carl Weathers passed away. Like, that sucks. But I just wanted to call that out and say we're dedicating this episode to him, even though it's not necessarily Carl Weathers centric, but just an appreciation for who he was as an actor and seemingly as he was as a person, and just willing to do what it took to not only continue to work in the industry, but to make people happy. And like I said, his role as Chubbs in Happy Gilmore is one that I'm gonna remember forever, just because that's a big part of that that movie. Like everyone knows, just tap it in, just give it a little tap.
No, it's just really depressing because he just seemed to enjoy being a working actor. I mean, we have in the last 10 years as streaming's become a thing, we've seen like, oh my gosh, this movie star is now switching over and going to do a TV show, oh, there's a famous case where the Divergent series wanted to be finished off as like a TV movie, and the lead actor said, "No, I make movies." He looking at his career, he did Rocky. He was Apollo Creed in Rocky in 1976, and the next year, an unnamed role in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, MP officer. This is a guy who just enjoyed working, doing, he did stints on $6 Million Man, Kung Fu, TV shows like The Defiant Ones and Tour of Duty and In the Heat of the Night and stuff like that. And then just kind of bounced back and forth. He just plugged away, and that's really admirable.
Very well said. But with that, we're going to take a break here from our friends Karen and Ann over at Sugar Coated Murder, and we'll be back to talk about what you doing.
Hey, Ann Barner.
Hey, Karen Baby.
We need a promo. Like where we talk about what we do on our podcast.
On our Sugar Coated Murder podcast? Like how we love to bake and talk about murder?
That's what we need to talk about.
There you go.
I think we've talked about it. Y'all find us on all your favorite listening apps.
Stay sweet.
And don't murder.
Because if you kill people,
we will talk about you.
And you don't want anyone talking about you, especially two wonderful ladies from the South who love to bake sweets while discussing true crime. So don't do it. It's not worth it unless you really need to do it for some reason.
Unless you really want to.
I mean, it's a free country, I guess.
I mean, I don't care if they talk about me.
I guess we know
I have some murder to do.
And they will talk about you. Well, I guess we know what Matt's doing. So, Alex, what you doing?
I'm going to start off with a quick rant because I'm mad at myself.
Isn't that all you do?
How dare you? So they've decided to remaster a controversial game from the past that it was only 3 years old, called The Last of Us Part 2. They say they wanted to enhance it to really take more usage of the PS5's power and blah, 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 blah. You watch any video about the differences in the upgrade, and there's not much, if anything. You might get a little bit less blooming. Some of the field of view is a little bit, it has more depth. But the thing that ticks me off is they could have made it a free upgrade for those of us who bought it on the PS4. But no, you have to pay $10 for it.
Well, yeah, they stopped doing that. They said a couple years ago they were going to stop doing that, unfortunately.
And yet they still do it for other games, because I just bought a PS4 in the last 9 months. PS5, and I have put in my other games and got the free upgrade.
Well, I think it's a thing where, like, I'm not, to be clear, I don't disagree with you. I think it is bad. I think $70 games are silly, but I think it's a thing where it's like they're grandfathered in, but like going forward, any new games they're going to make you pay,
right? Which
sucks. I think the last one they did was like the second Horizon game.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, because they were going to do that charge, and people were pissed, and they were like, all right, okay, fine, we won't, but from now on, you guys are going to have to pony up.
The thing that I find bullshit is that it's a 3-year-old game. It looks fantastic on the PS4. It looks fantastic on the PS5, but they have to basically find an excuse to get money out of their failed project, the Last of Us multiplayer game, which they can't. And so what do? They decided to take some of the assets, roll it in, say this is remastered, and put out basically a roguelike version, as a free part of the upgrade, as a remaster, so they can try to get $10 off it. Now, mind you, I'm a sucker, so I did it because I paid the $10 to upgrade from PS4 to PS5 because my PS4 may very well die eventually, and I want to play it looking great, and I want to try this mode. But the thing that ticks me off the most about it is that and I didn't realize it until after I had done the upgrade. They had my $10. That God of War Valhalla did the exact same thing, but didn't charge you for it when they dumped. God of War Ragnarok did a free release of a roguelike mode called Valhalla in December to celebrate that they had been nominated as Game of the Year. And so, yes, I'm just pissed because if it's successful enough, because mind you, there's idiots like me who gave their money, that games that are a year and a half, 2 years old will suddenly have a remastered edition come out with like a little add-on, 1 gig game mode, so they can get another $10 out of you, another 15, another 20. They just want to, and I'm already pissed enough. I've already done this before, where I'm deep in the Destiny ecosystem, where I have to pay to continue to play this stupid game that is monetized out the ass, where every week they try to get you to spend $20 on a new skin, and I've never done it. I refuse to, because I'm already paying $15 every 3 months for the seasons and $70 every damn year for the expansion pack. But that game studios now consider a game that is less than 4 years old, that was released simultaneously on PS4 and PS5, in need of a remaster, and you sit there and you look at it on your 65-inch 4K TV of like, what is the difference? And it's like, oh wow, that pixel popped into view 1 second earlier. Damn, that did not enhance my life at all.
Well, it's interesting because, I think this is a thing that has already been happening. You just see it usually more. It's usually closer to when the console life cycle restarts, right? Because The Last of Us Part 1 comes out on PS3, and then within a year, it's got a remastered version on PS4. Granted, on PS4, you couldn't play PS3 games. It's part of the reason there. But then they remake The Last of Us, the original one, even though you can play the PS4 version on the PS5, and it still looks great. So there's a degree to which, like, I'm kind of surprised I didn't do this earlier, because the original The Last of Us was a PS4 game. It came out before the PS5 came out, right? But it was in a similar space to the original game, where it was like a big original PlayStation game that is coming out right at the end of the life cycle. So I'm honestly surprised they did not do some kind of remaster sooner, which is not to take away from your point, because I think that you're onto something there, where it is, and there's also this is just something that Naughty Dog seems interested in doing.
I'm sure part of the factoring in of this remaster as well is the quote unquote synergy of season 2 of The Last of Us starting to film soon. So they want to have that shiny new version that people are going to be able to pick up and play and be like, oh yeah, look at how close this is compared to the show and the movie, or not the show and the game.
Yeah, and you want to get people who, like, I think the business reasoning is like, okay, this is a PS4 game that can play on PS5, but somebody who's coming in and maybe just watched the show and wants to see what's up, they may not seek out a PS4 game, and odds are they're going to find it used, which means we don't make any money off of that. On top of people like you, and I've considered it, I'll be honest, where you're like, oh, I'm going to pay $10 to upgrade, even if I don't even like the game, as you do not, and you're just curious to see what the updates are. It's one of those interesting, weird, and usually bad things about the game industry that I think The Last of Us in the last couple of years has been particularly bad about, because I think the first game didn't need a remake. I think I've heard some people talk sugar about this new mode, but I don't think it needed a full new $70 release. But, if a game company can resell you a game, they're gonna.
Look at Nintendo.
Yep.
Well, yeah, Nintendo is still selling games from the 90s for full price.
Well, when Nintendo does it, it's good because I like those games.
Of course.
And Shigeru Miyamoto is my friend.
And all the Nintendo fanboys then go after a poor game studio who makes the Pokemon game we've all wanted our entire lives.
Okay, that's not what that game is, but all right.
It's Pokemon
I
with
don't even
guns,
know
man.
what we're talking about there.
Pal World,
that game
over
is
22 million players
Pal
in,
World.
in the past 10 days.
that game is Minecraft with Pokemon with guns. Not exactly what people have been clamoring for.
Oh, you're telling me 22 million people in 10 days is wrong?
I'm saying I think that maybe the impetus there is not, ooh, this is finally the Pokemon game we've been wanting forever. As a longtime Pokemon player, I will say that I've never been like, ooh, I wish I could put my Pokemon to work and do bullshit crafting.
Right. You just want the same release every 6 months or so.
I can't get
what
into
are we
this
up
with you
to?
right now.
Pokemon.
This is
Emerald
what you're
the
doing, not
15th.
what you're griping. Alex,
Can't-
the intro soundbite seems to be aptly appropriate because, man, you've been stewing, but I think it's time to...
Well, I'm done. If Matt had just said, yeah, I agree, that's kind of bullshit, versus, you know what, don't you dare come after those capitalist hearts of those video game companies, and how dare you besmirch Nintendo re-releasing Pokemon at full price every 6 months.
Okay, first of all, okay.
Jesus, this
I
is
kn-
not
I
the
know
spirit
you-
of the episode.
I know you're making a joke. That's not what they do. But also, I said several times that I don't disagree with you.
You can't hear it, but we're actually laughing because we're just giving each other shit.
I'm taking
I'm sorry,
it
we're
personally. And so
smiling.
is
You
my
can't
good
hear the
friend,
laughter.
Shigeru Miyamoto.
And isn't Reggie your dad?
Reggie is my dad.
I knew it.
That's that's been canon on the show for a while. I just had to...
I need to make
just
sure
had to
people know.
refresh. Yep, exactly.
All right, Matt, what you doing?
Really? There we go.
Quiet, Josh.
Fine, I'll move on. Matt,
Well,
what you doing?
I've also been a real gamer boy recently. Speaking of Sony projects that I'm not positive need to exist, but I played them anyway. I think maybe probably had a little better time than Alex did. Is after 4 years picking away at it since it came out in I think March 2020. Cast your mind back to those fun days. I finally finished Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Ooh.
Ahead of the release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth later this month.
So refresh me real quick. Rebirth is like chapter 2 of the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Correct. Yes, they did this. They are doing a big series. I think at this point they've settled on a trilogy of games remaking Final Fantasy VII, which I'm a bit ambivalent about. And I've never been a person who's like, this game needs a remake. The first game was pretty much just the Midgar portion of the game, which if you don't know Final Fantasy VII, it's like in the original game, it's the first 5-10 hours of the game where you're in this sort of not cyberpunk, like dystopian steampunk city, sort of not steampunk, but it's kind of like a modern city that's all fucked up.
It looks a little Resident Evil Raccoon City-ish.
Sure. Yeah, and that's what the focus of that first game was. And then the next game will be from the point at which like the characters get out into the open world to ? I don't think they've said exactly where it ends yet. And then the third game presumably is however they're going to tackle the end of the game. And it's a game where like I really like it's gorgeous. Like I finished it off on PS5, and I think that was another one that did come with a free upgrade. And I played the PS5 specific DLC. But it looks great, and I enjoy playing it for the most part. Like the combat is just really interesting. It's like a real-time action game, but it's trying to splice in some of the like turn-based combat of the original as well, where like, you can control any of the characters in your party, but also you can open up a menu and tell Tifa or whoever to go do this attack or whatever else. Because it is a full game that is covering what was originally like 5 hours. There are definitely points where I'm like, oh, I see. You just took like a thing that was a single screen in the original game and expanded it to like a 30-minute sequence in this game. Um, so it's definitely like a love-hate relationship. But overall, I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to Rebirth, maybe despite my reservations. I don't know.
So
Go ahead.
So this is my question, because I love Final Fantasy VII. I have not played the remake. I'm going to wait until they're done with all three of them. Just
Sure.
like when they announced StarCraft 2, and I'm like, I've been waiting for StarCraft 2 forever. Oh, we're splitting to 3. Okay,
Yeah, it's
I'm
3
going to
games.
wait to 3 because screw you guys. But the first game, put in things that Josh might properly understand, it's only about 10% of the game. It's like you getting the hobbits out of the Shire.
Yeah.
That's about how far into the epic that is Final Fantasy VII that the first game was.
Why am I being singled out in this?
Because you haven't played Final Fantasy VII.
How do you
Alex
know
is
I've
on
never
one.
played Final Fantasy VII?
Have you played Final Fantasy VII?
No.
Okay, there we go. So, how do they go?
But that's
from
not
just,
the point.
So how do they go from Midgard, and they're gonna have a second game? I mean, because famously, I remember. So Final Fantasy VII was 3 discs. And there was literally a sequence where you're on like a submarine at the end of the second disc that if you step into like a tunnel, you had to switch discs.
Yep.
And it was a great grind point. So basically you would beat the battle there, have to switch disc, hit the save, then put the disc back, go back through the tunnel, put the second disc back in, and it was a great way to grind.
Yeah.
Are they going to stop at that tunnel?
That's a good question. That's the thing, is I don't know. I mean, if the first one is anything to go by, they make it more of a like quote unquote modern RPG in terms of like, oh, it's kind of open worldy, not really open worldy, but like you can kind of travel between various zones at most of the time, and there's side quests, and there were side quests in the first game, but it's more like it's less, oh, you have to like spend hours breeding the chocobos or whatever, grinding out golden saucer, and more like, oh, this person wants you to find 4 cats or shit like that.
Yeah.
So there is definitely a sense that there is like padding, and like really kind of, like I said, lengthening sequences, that both because they're like doing fully voiced cutscenes, and because the combat is more action oriented, and because they're like sort of stretching things out maybe more artificially than that as well. They're really sort of luxuriating in that space, in a way that like I think mostly works. Like I said, I'm somebody who, for years people wanted a Final Fantasy VII remake, and I was like, I mean, with any remake like this, I'm like, no game needs a remake, but if it comes out and it's good, great. So I was, kind of ambivalent about it, and then it feels good in the hands, but there are things where you definitely feel them trying to stretch it out because they want to hit like 30 hours or whatever.
This is where you say something, Josh.
I played the demo once, and the hack and slash mechanics threw me off real bad because I was like, isn't this supposed to be an RPG?
Well, that's one of the things that's interesting about the combat, is that it is like the hack and slash, but there's also, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. You do have like this, you do have spells and abilities and summons and stuff, and you're trying to, one of the tricks to the combat is also every enemy has a stagger meter, right? And especially with bigger enemies, you're trying to like figure out what they're weak to, and really pour that on so that then they are staggered and they take a bunch of big damage, right? So it's like there is sort of that JRPG menu based kind of move selection.
Tactics.
It's just also paired with, okay, it's also mostly all in real time, but sometimes you can sort of like slow down the action to a crawl and say, okay, Cloud has to do this. I'm playing as Tifa maybe, so I'm going to have her do this, and then Barrett is going to do his.
So it's a
his
little
thing.
Kingdom Hearts evolution,
Sort of, yeah.
The combat.
Yeah, it feels very much in line with that kind of strain, or like Final Fantasy 15 was a little similar too, if you played that. So yeah, I mean, the combat is maybe like the best part of it, and the rest of it's fine too. But like I said, there's times where they're like, ooh, that was a cool iconic like background we made for the first game, but now it's like there's a whole sequence of robot arms that you have to puzzle through, as opposed to just, oh, what an interesting detail in the background of this screen.
And I've been a video game boy too. I recently just finished a playthrough of the Mass Effect trilogy, Legendary Edition. Played FemShep, Paragon storyline, and I will still maintain that the Mass Effect trilogy is like 99.8% a fantastic classic video game trilogy. I still hate the endings. The endings just, they don't feel like a win for me in any scenario. And like I get the sacrifice play is kind of inevitable with these kind of games, but none of them feel like the sacrifice is worth it.
Mm.
And I don't want to relitigate Mass Effect 3 9, 8, 7 years later, however long it's been.
12.
It's been longer. 12, yeah, 12, because I
Wow.
played that before I ever met Ricky. Mass Effect 3 especially, they refine the gameplay mechanic so well. I love the Omniblade inclusion. The combat is really good. I love the quick select of your teammates' abilities, which they introduced that in Mass Effect 2, but I love that series so much. And it this time around it served as my palate cleanser because I had abandoned Tears of the Kingdom. I couldn't keep going. I couldn't keep powering through, and I just needed something that I knew I would enjoy. And so I booted up the Legendary Edition on my Steam Deck, and it's everything I needed it to be, except the ending. It still leaves a bad taste in my mouth, but I'll deal with that 0.02% or 0.2% of a bad experience. I don't even want to say bad game. It's a bad experience for me. Some people love it, and that's well within their right. But for me, it's not the endings that I want or need in this scenario. But yeah, that's one of the things I've been doing.
Yeah, I played through the Legendary Edition as well when it first came out in, I want to say 2019, 2020. I forget when it actually hit, but I also took that as an opportunity to replay all the games. And I don't know if they totally hold up, but they are very solid. This, I think I did all that before a while back. We did the 15th anniversary episode about Mass Effect, so some of this is
Yeah, with Dan from Casting Views.
yeah, some of this is perhaps what I said back then, or maybe it's the opposite, and I'm being a hypocrite without realizing it. I don't know. But it was a good time. It was like the first time I had played most of the DLC for Mass Effect 2 and 3, aside from like whatever they gave you for free. Because at the time they were like trying to get people to buy the games new. So they did the thing where it's like, if you buy it new, there's a free DLC pack and also access to the multiplayer or whatever, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But like I never really I never paid extra for like the Shadowbroker DLC or, the Citadel DLC for Mass Effect 3.
Citadel DLC is so good.
Yeah, so it was really nice to finally go back and see all that stuff in context too.
Yeah, the Citadel DLC is probably my favorite DLC of all. I think like 4 or 5 that they did. I think they did one DLC pack for Mass Effect 1, then they did 2 for the respective sequels. But the Citadel DLC just nails everyone's characterizations, and they bring back everyone. The only regret I have with my most recent playthrough is that I forgot to finish the Miranda mission in Mass Effect 3. So she didn't get an invite to my party.
Oh no.
And I was like, no, Yvonne Strahovski has to be at my party. But I couldn't go and replay the DLC after I had already completed it. And then the very next mission was the Miranda mission. And I was like, that's why she wasn't on my invite list. And she's gonna hate me forever. I'm sorry, Yvonne Strahovski.
My biggest whiff when I replayed it was like, Mass Effect 3 originally had this really cool multiplayer mode that was like tied into the main story, and like
I love that the multiplayer mode for Mass Effect 3 is so good.
yeah, and there's like it factored into in the third game. You have this what they call a galactic readiness score that kind of helps determine in the background, how some things shake out and also which ending you get. And they took it out. They took out the multiplayer for the re-release, and they just sort of rebalanced all the single player points so that it all evened out. And it was like a thing where I think I missed like there are certain points in the game where you have all these side missions that factor into that score, and at certain points it's like those side missions, little nothing missions, kind of fall off. You can't do them anymore.
Mhm.
And I think I lost like 3 of them at the end of like the first act or whatever. And I was like, oh, whatever, that's fine. Only come to find out later that I was like 5 points shy of like the perfect score to get best ending. And I was like,
Yeah.
God damn it, I don't care. My shepherd survived. I don't
which even
care.
which even the best ending, the quote unquote perfect ending that you can get through the destruction ending still doesn't work for me because you destroy all synthetics, which like losing Edie doesn't make sense to me because she's an artificial intelligence that is remotely controlling a synthetic android. So like the fact that Edie is completely gone makes no sense to me because she's not a synthetic, she's an artificial intelligence. So like that's another nitpick that I have with some of these endings.
I think there is a way, and this is all based on recollections of when I was like frantically Googling around the time that I did this playthrough and realized I whiffed it. But I think there is a way where like Shepard survives, the Geth and the the Tali race, I forget their name.
Quarians.
Quarians, thank you. They all live in peace, and like I think there is a way to throw that needle, but I forget which option it is and like what you
There are
have to
two
do.
endings where you have the synthesis ending and then you have the amalgamation ending, whatever you want to call it, where Shepard basically uploads spoilers for Mass Effect 3. um in the I think it's the blue ending, Shepard uploads their consciousness into the Reapers, but it essentially just uploads their moral compass into the Reapers, and whatever is made of Shepard is kind of lost, similar to what happens with the Geth and Legion. And so like Shepard technically no longer exists, but their moral code now is in the Reapers, and the Reapers like stop the destruction, they help to rebuild a better society.
Oh,
And then there's the synthesis ending where everyone just becomes synthetics, and
right,
therefore the Reapers mission is no longer viable. It
right,
makes no sense because no one is organic, but there's also synthetic life that is existing. And like that one feels like a loss to me too, because you're abandoning, for lack of a better word, the galaxy's humanity. And you're like, the idea is that eventually society would evolve into being hybrid synthetics anyway. So you're
sure,
just pushing that evolution to that point, and it doesn't feel like the right ending to me. I think the blue ending that I just talked about, where Shepard uploads their consciousness, that's the one that I probably lean towards more. But again, it still feels cheap.
sure.
That's Shepard's the last one that has to die in this sequence, and an essence of them survives, but not in any truly meaningful way. Besides, the Reapers stop doing what they're doing.
Yeah, those endings are so interesting just because like I totally I personally am fine with them. I'm not like, oh, I love this, but I'm not like I despise it either. But it is also so interesting because I can I can at least understand how, maybe not the specifics of the endings, but how they like it boils down to like a not quite binary choice. And this is almost certainly something I would have said in that previous episode, because like I think especially in the Xbox 360 and PS3 era of consoles, there is just no way to like truly account for everything
Mm-hmm.
that players may or may not have done. So like they have to like boil it down to, okay, the point at which all that is factoring into your gameplay is over, and now it's just Shepard picking one of 3 things that largely is a predetermined outcome. Although with the expanded ending, I think they also added some flavor where like, oh well, maybe the Geth survive, or maybe Shepard sort of survives, or whatever else. So it is one of those things where like, okay, I understand why people were maybe upset, but also I understand why that happens, right? It's just an interesting case.
So yeah, that's one of the things I've been doing. Matt, what you been doing?
Me? Oh gosh, I was just gonna say before that, I also recently came into possession of a Steam Deck, and one of the things I was gifted as part of that was the Legendary Edition on that platform. now I'm thinking about playing it again.
It
I know
handles really well because, like I said, I played it on my Steam Deck, and I think that's the only way I could have completed a playthrough in my current lifestyle, because I
yeah.
have 3 kids that also want to play video games, and I am very tired at the end of the day. So like having the Steam Deck to play in bed, or like whenever I take a break at work, or whenever I have 20 minutes to sit down and just do nothing. It took me about a month to go through. I did the math. It took me a little over 20 hours to do Mass Effect 1, 24 hours for Mass Effect 2, and 23 hours for Mass Effect 3. And that's me because I've played these games so many times. Like I'm skipping dialogue and
Sure.
doing other things. But I think that is that Mass Effect 1 playthrough, especially, I think that is the fastest I've ever completed that game.
Yeah, I think that was pretty close to where I was at too when I played them. I think I picked them up on Xbox a few years back. But I am, now I'm itching to play them again. I don't know if I quite I'm ready for a playthrough because I just did them all a few years ago. But as we were talking about that, I was like, oh, wait a second, somebody sent me that, and those are good games.
It plays really well. I will say that it transitions to the Steam Deck very well.
I really have just been gamer boy this past little while, and something else I've been playing a lot recently is Golden Sun, which is an RPG from the Game Boy Advance era that they recently finally dropped onto the Nintendo Switch online service. They announced it when they first announced they were launching that in February 2023, and every month since then I've been like, all right, where is it? And it was not until January that they were like, okay, fine, here you fucking go, idiot. Reggie is really withholding in his love.
That's what good dads do. They hold back their love and they hold back their rewards.
Yeah, I'm learning that. But yeah, if you don't know it, Golden Sun is, I think it was 2001. It's an RPG on the Game Boy Advance it's a pretty generic RPG. It's, you play Isaac and his buddies and they have to go out and find MacGuffins to save the world, and it's a fantasy world, and you run around and do random battles and go to a town and they've got an issue that you have to solve to forward the quest, and you do it, and there you go. But it's an RPG that I really, really loved when it first hit on the Game Boy Advance. So I've been enjoying revisiting it at times where it's like, it's pretty simple, and I've played it before, so I'm just like, okay, I'll throw on a TV show or my obligatory Star Trek reference for the episode or a YouTube or whatever, and then play that while that's on in the background and stuff. And it's been fun. And they dropped Golden Sun and its sequel, Golden Sun: The Lost Age, which is a game that years and years ago I was in the process of playing the hell out of on the Game Boy Advance, but my Game Boy Advance with that cartridge in it was stolen, so I've never finished it. So I'm hoping eventually I can finally right that wrong. But yeah, I don't have a ton to rant about or rave about. It's just a solid little nostalgia RPG that I'm digging on.
Alex, what you doing?
I have been playing a game called Nobody Saves the World with my wife.
Yeah, that's a good game.
Yeah, it's from the studio that made the Guacamelee games 1 and 2. They're kind of like Metroidvania games, except this one is like an old school RPG where you're this big-eyed, no-eyed character that everybody calls Nobody, who just happens to stumble across a wand and now is in charge of saving the world. And at every turn, everybody remarks that you don't wear pants and that you're not the person actually saving the world. So you're somebody's assistant. Oh, you're this, which is just great. And the crux of the game is, as you explore the world, you complete challenges to unlock animal forms. Like if you can turn into a horse, you can kick people. If you turn into a mouse, you run around with like giant chompy teeth, which is so satisfying because it's a little mouse on the screen, and when it chomps, it makes these big giant teeth. When we unlock the turtle, immediately both of us like, this is the best thing in the world. The turtle's fantastic. It can swim super fast, and it's a adorable animation because when it's in the water, like lifts its head up and looks all happy, swimming super fast, gets on land kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to turtle. but then you pop into your shell and you jab people. It's fun. It's clever. It's cute. It's a couch co-op game, and it was a PlayStation Plus free game a few months ago. And I will say it has the most unoffensive DLC encouragement I've come across. We enter this part of the world as we're exploring, and we're looking through these like catacombs, and we come across this ritual that's happening, and everybody's like, oh, okay, well, if you can change animal forms, you should join. We'll give you 2 new ones if you can win our tournament. It's like, okay. And as you get to the tournament gates, it pops up and says, have you paid your fee for joining the tournament? And it's like, and it says no. So I click no, and the PlayStation 5 store pops up and says, would you like to buy the DLC? And if you say no, you reject it. It's like, well, you can't do the tournament then, but you can play golf. You go into a golf mini game. It's just fun. It's a great way to kill an hour and a half. It's challenging enough where you start unlocking like evolutions where you can mix and match abilities, and I love it. Matt, you played it, you said?
Yeah, I played it when it first hit. It was on Game Pass, and I really enjoyed the Guacamelee game, so I checked it out. And I don't think I finished it, but I played a lot of it, and I also really enjoyed it. Just the vibes were great, beautiful art style, and like a weird art style too, which
very weird.
And just some of the weird classes, evolutions, whatever you want to call them, that you unlock, are just like, I forget some of them now, and it's like, oh, there's the wizard, there's the whatchamacallit that you would not maybe expect when you first start the game, and your first thing is like, oh, you can turn into a horse now, like you said. Yeah.
One of the things I love about it is they put a lot of attention to detail, because when you first turn into a horse, there's other horses nearby, and you can go and talk to all the horses, and some of them are like one of them you get an achievement for like finding love as a horse, which is just so cute. It's like, it goes something along the lines of, as you stare into the eyes, you realize that as a horse, you've never seen quite something so attractive. You get a little achievement, and then you go and talk to like another horse, and just kind of like neighs at you, uninterested in you. It's just a good time. I like it.
Josh, what are you doing?
Oh yeah, forgot about that.
I mean, let's keep the video game train rolling. Joey Fitzgerald from the Game Club Pod gifted me a game called Hue, which is a fun little puzzle platformer. HUE. It's kind of in the vein of stylistically, it's kind of in the vein of Limbo.
Well, I've heard of that
Xbox
game.
360
I've
days.
heard of it. Yeah.
But in this game, you're manipulating the color palette of the background to solve environmental puzzles, which, oh man, this game scratched my puzzle itch so good. I love a good puzzle platformer. I love a good puzzle game. And this game just, I beat the main game in about 4 hours. And then there's a collectible side mission that you can do throughout the game. I just decided to plow through the main story of the game, and then go back through and get the collectibles afterward. But it's just a really fun game, and I'm very appreciative of Joey to send it, even for 8 hours. Like I was in heaven, because this game was just, it played really well. Again, I played it on the Steam Deck, but it handled really well. The mechanics work. Basically, the idea is the world is black and gray, like kind of like Limbo, but this kid and his mom have figured out you can see colors, and his mom has gone missing, and the kid's tasked with trying to find his mom. So he goes through the world and he finds these formulas that she's left behind for him, and that allows him to see the different colors of the world. So like one of the first colors you get, I think, is a light blue, and there's like light blue boxes or boulders, and when you change the color palette to light blue, they disappear. Now you can walk through them, or you can move to the other side of them, and then you can pull them along to where you need them to go to solve the puzzle once you change the background back to whatever is not light blue. And it's really weird to explain, but if you watch a trailer for it, or if you get your hands on it, really quick and simple to pick up. My kids enjoyed watching me play it. I absolutely adored this game. It's a game that I think if you can pick it up for $4 or $5, it's well worth the money.
I think my wife played that. She's really big into playing puzzle games, and it sounds familiar. That the collection and changing of hues to solve the overlapping puzzles. I have vague memories, or it was acid. One of the two.
One of those two. One of those two.
So I will say that there's a sequence towards the last like two sets of puzzles, I think, or maybe three, where a pipe bursts, and yeah, it's after you get to the university. Um, there's a janitor who's like, "Oh, hey, a pipe burst, be careful." And so I'm like, "Oh, do not touch the running water." And I went through, I think, like 4 or 5 puzzles where I did not touch the water. I did not touch whatever color the water was. I got rid of it and just moved on with my time. And I solved those puzzles without it. And then I got stuck on one puzzle. And I'm like, how do I do this without getting touched by the water? Turns out you can get touched by the water. It's only
Yeah.
the lasers and the spikes that become a problem.
I have not had a chance to play it, but it's been on my radar, and I've heard lots of good things about it, including you now. So maybe I might have to finally take the plunge.
It's a game that it feels like it's got that Nintendo polish where they just thought of everything. Like there's one of the collectibles you can only get by finishing a puzzle, going through a door, and then coming back through the door to kind of reset the puzzle. And then you can climb up a bunch of boulders that
Oh,
typically you would need to fall down to complete the puzzle. But now because you're on the other side of the puzzle, you can use them to climb up, and then you can go get the collectible. So it thinks of a lot of different ways to stretch your brain too. It's not just, oh, flip this switch, change this color, flip that switch, I'm done. It does a lot to really ease you into the more complex puzzles, and it just is really good. And I've thanked Joey personally through Discord, but I'll put it on the record. Thank you so much, Joey, for this game. It was a lot of fun, and like I said, 8 hours well spent, and I'll probably come back to it at some point this year just to again cleanse my palate and scratch that puzzle itch.
yeah. Rad.
Alex, what you doing?
I am patiently waiting for the return of Josh Gates. Now, for the uninitiated, Josh Gates has been in our lives for roughly the last, let me see, I'm going to say 16 years. He started on the Sci-Fi Channel hosting like a kind of like a monster hunting show called Destination Truth. Then he left Sci-Fi after that ran its course to start Expedition Unknown on Travel Channel, which became so watched that it was moved onto Discovery Channel. And he is a joy. The shows are more an excuse for him to go someplace and just be part of the culture, explore what's going around there. Oh yeah, and we're looking for a lost airplane, or oh yeah, apparently Bigfoot's out here, or something like that. And the gaps in my year were Expedition Unknown isn't on, and then Expedition X, which is his spin-off rebrand, got some different hosts to kind of like do the paranormal thing. It's terrible. And I will tell you what makes it worse. We've recently, after the last season of Expedition Unknown, decided to cut cable because we realized we watched 2 channels, and most of the stuff we watched 2 or 3 days later on the DVR, which is on Hulu or streaming. So we got rid of that burden and found out that Max does this great thing where most of their shows, the night they air, you can click play. But here's a problem. Expedition X apparently is on some other weird contract where it only releases at the end of its season. And it hurts my heart to have to go 4 months without Josh Gates. He's called Indiana Dad Joke on the internet. That's what he's known as, because he kind of wears an Indiana Dad Jones hat, and he makes a bunch of really terrible dad jokes. It's a pain to this man who's been in my life for 16 years now, just weekly exploring the world. I'm going to be without him for 4 long, painful months.
And he's out there. Right now he could be out there doing it, and you can't watch it.
I know. Well, the thing about it is, like, so during the height of the pandemic, he aired a weekly TV show called Josh Gates Tonight because they couldn't go exploring, but they needed content on Discoveries. And he would interview people. And one of the things is he interviewed Shatner, and he's like, hey, listen, whenever we're done, whenever this is kind of over, we should do something. And they did something together for Shark Week. It was fantastic. And we found out that he'd actually been investigating the Beast of Bray Road up in Wisconsin at one point during the pandemic, and we didn't realize it. We're like, oh my gosh, if we would have known, we could have just driven up there and just driven in circles until we found him. Surely the camera crew would give it away. Now he does do things like he does speaking engagements and tours and stuff like that, but we haven't yet gone there, probably because I wouldn't get past security. But you know what? It just, Josh Gates, his weekly, just, it's a simple put on, enjoy a few jokes, see a beautiful tropical locale, the enthusiasm of the moment of whatever it is he's exploring. It's a good comfort.
Matt, what you doing?
Once again, living in the gamer zone. This is probably my big one for the last couple weeks. Is I've been playing a lot of Alan Wake 2.
Ooh.
Which is a game that came out near the end of last year. It is the sequel to Remedy's 2010 game, Alan Wake. Kind of a cult hit. People have been waiting for a sequel to it for a long time, and I think there were some sort of false starts, and I think people kind of didn't expect it was ever going to happen. So this game takes place, many years after the end of Alan Wake, where an FBI agent and her partner shows up to Bright Falls, which is the town from the first game, to investigate a series of disappearances and murders that seem to be being done by some kind of cult activity. And that quickly gets very weird, very supernatural, very strange. And then it starts to intersect with, Alan Wake himself, who, I guess, spoilers, at the end of the first game was sort of trapped in this weird dimension where his writing, he's an author, is like impacts the world around him, like art influences reality, and he's stuck here, and he's like, okay, I'll write my way out. And then in this game, it's like, well, how does this weird cult stuff intersect with Alan Wake, who's still missing? Are we going to find him? What's this weird dimension he's in? Things like that. And it is just like, it's not the best game I've ever played in terms of like how it feels to play. Some of the combat can be sketchy. There's a couple like late game sequences that feel slightly too frustrating in a unforgiving kind of way, but the vibes are immaculate. Something Remedy has been toying with recently, and that really kind of culminates here. You saw it a lot in their previous game, Control, which also was great, is this sort of mixed media approach where you have, it's a video game, so it's polygons and graphics and whatever else, but then also once in a while there's a live action scene, and that live action scene is spliced in with the gameplay in some way, either because there's a screen that's playing something live action, or like there's a weird, mystical thing you're seeing where it's like a live action scene is overlaid over the screen that you're playing, and it's just like a weird, eerie kind of vibe. It is a game that has like multiple musical sequences that are incredible. It's a game where Sam Lake, who is the writer and director of the game, plays 3 different characters, including one who is essentially just Max Payne from the video game Max Payne, and then also playing the actor who plays that character in a movie, and then also playing an FBI agent in the real world who has the same name as the fictional Max Payne character. It's like a weird, twisty, like surreal game where the vibes are like, what is reality? Like, is the stuff that we are experiencing real, or is it like part of the story that's being written, and like which of the things that we understand to be the truth is actually reality? And then also you're running around and shooting monsters and stuff.
So they're pulling an Ocean's 12? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if I know what that means. Can you
Julia
clarify?
Roberts impersonates Julia Roberts.
Well, kind of, yeah. It's just like a weird thing, and part of this too is like,
Seems like a
Remedy.
weird pull to get Marky Mark to show up in a video game like that.
It was a really weird cameo. I'll give them that. But it's also like, Remedy has always loved like doing little Easter eggs to their previous games, or like call forwards and things like that. And this is sort of like the ultimate culmination of that, where it's like we're referencing, we're doing deep cut references that if you know it, you're like, oh, that was from that one game. But it's also just a total thing in passing where they're like, they're tying their weird little universe together in ways that are really interesting and fascinating. And I don't
Sounds
know,
like they're
it's
taking the lower decks approach.
expand on that.
Well, like you're always dumbfounded at how I can watch Lower Decks and enjoy it, despite all the references and little nuances to the larger Star Trek universe. And I'm just like, I don't know, I don't know these things, so it just feels like a one-off reference to something that I'm like, I'm sure that's something, or at least it makes sense to someone who is invested in this universe. But for me,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
having
fair.
fun.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to think of the words to describe it, because it is just a really gripping game, and things were like, there's a musical sequence where you were like running through this weird surreal area that is like the backstage area of a TV studio, but like there's all kinds of screens around that is playing like basically a music video where the actors who play these characters are like dancing and singing the song about Alan Wake's life in live action, and it it just rules. It's hard to describe in words because it's such a visual experience, but that's just something that like Remedy as a studio does really well, where they're like interested in playing with mixed media stuff, really, and just like surreal humor. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, I liked Control, and I heard that they're set in the same universe, or there's acknowledgments of it, but I never got around to playing Alan Wake 1. So,
Alan Wake 2 is a game where like it definitely is a sequel to Alan Wake, where it's like they're referencing what happened in the previous game. There are things that I think, and Alan Wake is a game that I played, and I was not personally that into it when I played it. But Control was good enough, and like the vibes of Alan Wake 2 looked so good that I was really into this one. So I don't know how well it would work if you don't have like some familiarity with what happens in Alan Wake, but I also think they basically give you enough to get by. It's just there's maybe some things here and there that you don't maybe quite pick up on as, oh, that's following up on this thing from Alan Wake 1, or that's a character from Alan Wake 1 who is showing up again or whatever.
so Josh, what you doing?
I'm gonna go in a little bit of an offshoot of not of what we've been talking about, but what people might expect of me, because a couple of What You Doings ago, we talked about the Miraculous Ladybug and Cat Noir movie that was on Netflix that was unexpectedly a musical.
Yeah.
I was vaguely familiar with the franchise at that point when the movie came out. I was like, I'll watch the movie, whatever. It's going to be 90 minutes of my day. My kids are going to enjoy it. But I got the Last Airbendered, as I like to call it, where I get curious about something that's been adapted into a movie, because I somewhat famously in my friends circle, I kind of refused to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender because a former coworker of Matt and mine, she had Stephanie. It's so weird. That was her catchphrase. She famously was like really pushing me to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, and she was this coworker of ours that not everyone in the store enjoyed, because she was, as she loves to say, so weird. And so I'm like, I'm not watching anything this chick is recommending to me. And then the Last Airbender movie came out, and I was like, okay, I kind of got to see what this is about, because there's no way they decided to make a movie this bad based on something that is maybe equally as bad. So I went and like found it on Netflix, and I binged the entire series in like 3.5 days because I was just like
Wow.
so enthralled with it. I had like a weekend off, and I just watched it nonstop, and I loved it. And so with Ladybug, I thought the premise was cute. Is it's the magical girl Sailor Moon kind of concept. Girl gets special abilities for whatever reason, and she saves the day with her not quite love interest, maybe love interest, who in this case is Cat Noir, not Tuxedo Mask. So I'm like, okay, let's see what the TV show is like, because the movie seemed like it kind of mashed the series finale with the season finale or the premiere. So it's like origin story and finale. And season 1 and 2 are very campy, very Power Rangers, Sailor Moonish, but the show starts to kind of grow with its audience. It's starting in season 3 and going into season 4, and it's really adorable. The way that Christina V portrays Marinette and Ladybug is just adorable and fantastic and fairly realistic, but it's still cartoonish and campy. But the one thing I really wanted to bring up, which first I'll bring up, like, it's a show that doesn't take itself too seriously, and it knows what it is, and it's having fun with it. Like, I sent Alex and Justin a thing where a video clip where they do a Ghostbusters homage. Um, there's one villain who is their science teacher, who is sees Ladybug and Cat Noir, and they're like, "Back off, kids! I'm a scientist." And then Ladybug and Cat Noir make a plan, and Cat Noir is like, "I love this plan. I'm happy to be a part of it." And they go and do the plan. So it's cool to see that they do these little Easter eggs. But there's one episode in particular, I believe it's in season 4, where a newer character is really sad because the person she's the person she's in love with is going to be moving on into high school and not going to be in the same middle school with her anymore. Marinette assumes that it's the person she's in love with, Adrian, because of course he's the most popular kid in school, so it's got to be him. And throughout the course of the episode, Marinette is kind of intentionally sabotaging Zoe's attempts to proclaim her love to whoever. Marinette's just again assuming that it's Adrian. Turns out at the end of the episode, Zoe is in love with Marinette,
Mm.
which I think is very progressive of a kid's show. But the way the scene is handled as well is just absolutely beautiful and not something I would expect from a show like this. So like Marinette's like, you go tell Adrian you're in love with him. I'm not going to get in your way anymore. Zoe says, it's not Adrian I'm in love with. Marinette gets confused, looks at her and says, who are you in love with? And the camera changes back over to Zoe. She looks up and you see Marinette reflected in her eyes, and just beautiful
Aw.
animation for what is a very cheaply animated show. And Marinette just like the music changes, she calms down, and she just is like, thank you. She just thanks her for her love. She can't reciprocate it because she is not bi or gay, but she doesn't just be like, oh my goodness, you can't be in love with me, and be like really awkward, campy about it. She acknowledges that this person has feelings and just says thank you. And I thought that was beautiful.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of this before you or have mentioned it before, but that's sounds cute and sweet.
It's very cute, very sweet. The merchandise is adorable as well. My kids have been collecting some dolls recently. Um, and I'm like not at all embarrassed to say that I enjoy this show. But as far as Ladybug goes, I would definitely recommend anyone check it out. It's going to be campy. Think Sailor Moon. It's magical girl stuff. It's 14-year-olds thinking they found the loves of their lives. So like it's very aimed at a certain demographic, but it is very sweet and it's very genuine. And I think that it's a show that maybe it won't be viewed as timeless, but there's going to be a segment of people similar to like I'm wearing my Power Rangers shirt right now. There's going to be a certain segment of people that will fondly remember the show and come back to it with their kids. Matt, anything else you doing?
Oh, I've got a couple things. I guess maybe the biggest thing that I have been up to, and I won't luxuriate too much about this because it wasn't what I came in thinking I would talk about, but I've been really into watching The Sopranos lately.
Oh ho.
Um, I have seen most of it before when I was a much younger person, and I was mostly like, oh, a show with violence and nudity. Well, how cool. Isn't that great? So some of the like deeper or more complicated stuff like right over my head at the time. And I've always meant to like go back and finish it because I never, saw the final couple seasons. So I, just did a watch through. I started over, and I've been watching it maybe for the last couple months, off and on here and there, and it's you don't need me to tell you, but it's a very good television show. It's the show that sort of like broke open the floodgates of what we call prestige TV, and I think like you can totally see why. It's just it's deep and it's like funny, weirdly enough, and like scary, and not like scary, not like a horror movie, but like characters can become very scary and just like violent and interesting. It's like full of complex characters who are not like good people, but the show is like treating them as full humans who like are not just total monsters or like saints, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I have been vibing on it.
So, quick question about The Sopranos.
Yeah.
You have seen it all before, or you have not seen it all before?
When I was younger, I saw I think it was the first 4 seasons.
Okay.
Just various ways to like renting DVDs and stuff. And I know basically the broad strokes of the rest of the stuff. Like I know the infamous things that happen. It's just hard to not pick it up. But I have not. We have not quite gotten to anything I have not seen yet. We're nearing the end of season 4.
Okay.
So it's still a little bit before I go into like fully uncharted territory. So it's all stuff that I was like vaguely remembering as having happened, having seen it, but also because, like I said, I was not necessarily watching and understanding some of the complexities of it. It was more like, ooh, once in a while they're at a strip club and they show the naked ladies because I was a young man. And sometimes somebody gets whacked, and isn't that cool? That's obviously the point of the show, right? Well, not quite, but I'm digging it.
If I remember, the series ended while we were in high school, and I remember our journalism teacher being very invested in the finale. I don't remember what his reaction was, but I remember he was like, "I can't wait."
I think it was on while we were in high school, but it might have ended after because I think it ended in
2007.
2007. Yeah, so a couple of years
Okay.
later. But I definitely remember like we'd go in on Monday morning or whatever and chatting it up with our journalism teacher. He'd be like, crazy thing happened in The Sopranos this week, or other show that we're talking about.
Yeah, I just remember him being very invested in The Sopranos. I thought
Yeah.
maybe it was the finale that was really getting him.
It was sort of inspired by, and this is maybe a bit of a tangent, but something I've realized about myself is if I have a show like that that's all in front of me, or like if Netflix dropped an entire season at once, I am very easily distracted unless I can find a way to like apply some kind of structure onto it. So that's one of the reasons I listen to a lot of podcasts that are like goofy watch along podcasts. Like, oh, we're gonna watch 4 episodes of Clone Wars and talk about them. So that gives me a structure to like, okay, I'm watching 4 episodes ahead of this podcast, and then I listen to the podcast and watch the next ones. There's a TV critic who I've followed for a long time, Alan Sepinwall, and I can't remember his co-author on this book, but he wrote a book of essays that was like an episode by episode essay of every episode of The Sopranos, where they're writing about the individual episodes. And I picked up the book because it was cheap, and then I was like, oh, this is like what I'm finally going to do to get through this thing so I don't get distracted. So it's been very useful to like I watch an episode, then I read the passage about it, and then the next day I come back and watch an episode or two and read the stuff about it. So it's called the Sopranos sessions. Not a sponsor, but could be. If you care to do that kind of weird thing that I also do.
Well, I'm really glad you mentioned watch alongs, because Josh recently did a poll on Twitter if anyone would listen to a commentary track of Talking Smack, and I'm happy to announce that yes, we will be doing a watch along commentary track of the Three Amigos.
Oh wow! Okay, all right.
That's definitely one of them. I've been debating what our first one is. Three Amigos is actually a really good suggestion. Our friends over at Stew World Order, they were like, "Oh yeah, I mean that's a big time investment, so you got to make sure it's a good short one." And I think the Three Amigos and a Goofy movie are a couple that we should open with.
Is this finally how we get Josh to watch Star Trek? Where we the talking Trek, we watch an episode a week.
We'll do an audio commentary. Well, I'm not doing the TV series. At least I don't think anyone wants to invest in that right away. But it's a project that I've been wanting to do for a while, but I don't know how we branch it off. Maybe we just borrow a play from the Game Club Pod playbook where we just release them with different thumbnails under the same RSS feed, and people can listen if they want to. But I don't want to bog down the RSS so that everyone's like, "Oh, this one, no."
They already said that enough with the regular episodes.
Exactly.
So I'm going to continue our unsponsored but should be Max segment with my last "What am I doing?" I'm watching True Detective. Now, the first season of True Detective, I was behind the ball a lot. I didn't have HBO or anything like that, but I picked up the Blu-rays after a friend told me that, hey, this is like, weird, Lovecraftian, mystical stuff, and you like Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. I'm like, yeah, it was great. I dug it.
You should play Alan Wake too.
I actually plan on it. In my PlayStation Plus catalog is Alan Wake 1, the remaster. And once I finish that, I will.
Similar vibes, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I know Lewis really loved the first Alan Wake.
So
back to your thing. I didn't mean to bring it back to my thing.
True Detective season 2, it was an anthology thingy, and I've heard meh. 3 I've heard some more positive things about, but again, anthology, nothing really connected to 1. But this season, the original creator is hands off, and Issa Lopez has taken the reins, put together. She has written, directed all the episodes, brought in Jodie Foster and Fiona Shaw, brought in the Ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston, and also brought in professional boxer Kaylee Reyes, who is surprising for having a career as a boxer and only done like 2 things before co-starring as the co-lead of this prestige drama show alongside Jodie Foster. It's fantastic. The reason why I'm watching this is because my wife casually mentioned, "Ooh, did you hear about a show that was filmed in Iceland?" Because we honeymooned in Iceland and love Iceland.
But they're the bad guys from Mighty Ducks 2.
They are. And I was like, "What show?" And she says, "The new True Detective." And so we sit down to watch the first episode, which starts off bizarre. Of course, weird mystical things are happening. And she then looks at me and says, "I have to finish this, don't I?" I'm like, "Yep. You told me to put this on, and now we're doing this together." And she's invested. It's the entire show. Basically, the premise is for this season, it is set in Alaska. The basically 30 days of night have started far north, and Jodie Foster and Keely Riss are police detectives investigating a disappearance / possible murder that happens at a outpost station, like research station, very much like The Thing. And it gets weird, and it gets really heavy, and it is a fun and gorgeous show to watch because I don't know how they can make night consistently look compelling, but they do. So what about you, Josh? You got anything left for what you're doing?
I was just gonna say real quick to once again pull it back to my thing. It's funny that you mentioned your wife and the way she came in, because like when we're watching The Sopranos, I started The Sopranos as like just a thing I was doing, not not possessive about it, but just like, oh, I'm watching it in my free time, and then my wife would be hanging out like near the end of the second season, and now it's like, oh, this is a show we watch together. She has become fully hooked, and it'll be like after the baby's gone to bed, she's like, you want to watch The Sopranos?
Very cool.
Anyway,
Well, I'll hop on the I'm watching this with the wife train here. Spy Family, the anime based off the manga. They've I think they've finished season 2. I'm not quite sure. But it's a lot of fun. Basically, the idea is it's set in this fictional universe where it's kind of like Batman the Animated Series, where it's modern day, but it's modern day 1955. So they have like some modern technology, but also they scale it back a little bit. So there's like no cell phones or anything like that, but everyone behaves kind of like modern people. They just they're set in a world where technology kind of like peaked at this point. So they're just like, yeah, we're good here. But you have a spy from uh, Estonia, if I remember correctly. And then there's West Alice, which is the country the show takes place in. And so the Estonian spy named Twilight moves to West Alice because there's um, there's rumblings that maybe they're going to try that there's going to be a coup and there's going to be an uprising in the government that's eventually going to kick off a war with Estonia. So he's there trying to make sure that that doesn't happen by infiltrating the school, the grade school of one of the lead general who is thought to be part of this coup plot. And so what he has to do is he has to get a family to be less suspicious of this oppressive government. So he unknowingly adopts a psychic daughter who is named Anya, and she's adorable. And he creates a marriage of convenience with, again, unknowingly, an assassin who works to retain peace in West Alice as well. And so the entire show is kind of about how they're all just trying to hide what makes them unique and special while presenting themselves as like a normal everyday person. And Anya is kind of the weird middle ground because she's aware of everyone's secrets, but no one's aware of her secrets.
Huh.
So hilarity ensues with certain things. Season 1 kind of peters out a little bit at some point because they decide to break up the family dynamic and just send Twilight, who is the dad, on his own mission, and he has this weird like 3 or 4 episode arc where he's just in an underground tennis tournament with a partner of his, and it's fun, but it's not interesting given the premise of the show. And then in season 2, there's a similar like 4 or 5 episode arc where the entire family's on a yacht, or not a yacht, a cruise. And in this scenario, Anya and Twilight, the dad, are kind of having their own adventure while the mom is doing her assassin thing, but also being a bodyguard. So they kind of put a twist on what her typical actions are in her secret life. But it's a lot of fun. I would definitely recommend it for anyone who is interested in watching an anime that it's a little bit of slice of life, but also goes into hyper realism and a lot of fun action sequences. My favorite episode is in season 1, where they celebrate that Anya got into this prestigious grade school for kids. And so they rent out a castle and they let her play out this like spy fantasy she has. And so
Oh,
Twilight he uses all of his like his resources as a high ranking spy to get like henchmen and other people to pretend to be the bad guys for her. And Yor, who is the mom and the assassin, she gets really drunk. And so she's playing a henchman to the main bad guy. And at one point she starts facing off with Twilight. She's just really bought into the character because of how drunk she is. And she starts fighting him, and Twilight's like, what the hell is happening? Like, she's going to kill me. And then she like whiffs on a kick and falls over and just falls asleep on the ground.
Yeah, that's another one that I remember. I think I made a big splash, like online a little while ago, that I've heard lots of good things about, and I have just never quite gotten around to watching it. But it's on my radar.
Yeah, I've been watching it on Ricky and I have been watching it on Crunchyroll, not a sponsor, but
Should be.
quickly should be becoming a sponsor. If no one else has anything else, I'm just going to quickly dive into this too, because it's on the thumbnail and I'm not going to change it again. Matt and I have been reading the new Ultimate Spider-Man,
Yes.
which very interesting first issue, and Marvel is very clearly building up to something with this because they've been teasing a bunch of other of the Ultimate heroes. I think they've revealed the Ultimate Iron Man suit as well as the new Ultimate Black Panther suit.
Yeah, and I think they are launching. I think they've announced so far an Ultimate Black Panther book and possibly a new Ultimate X-Men book. And you know, we talked about it previously in our 2024 look ahead episode, but they did a mini series last year that was like stage setting called Ultimate Invasion that sort of like establishes the world, and then they did a one shot further establishing the world just called Ultimate Universe, which I have not read, but it's possible like they introduced new versions of these characters there that I've not seen.
Yeah, the first issue of Ultimate Spider-Man though is classic Jonathan Hickman stuff. It sets up a much bigger story, kind of a slow burn, but it also does a really good job of it's a very good pilot episode. It does enough to get you invested in the world, let you see what the differences are compared to the regular Marvel universe, and it leaves you off on a really big hook of like, yeah, I need to know what happens next, because minor spoilers for this first issue of Ultimate Spider-Man 2024. We don't see Spider-Man in this issue.
Yeah.
Peter Parker is just a family man who works at the Daily Bugle with his uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson. And he's just kind of feeling adrift. Like, he's just kind of going through the motions. He's got his family, he's got his wife, like everything should be perfect, but he feels like he's missing something. And at the end of the issue, he gets a message from who we assume he is a deceased Tony Stark. And he's like, hey, you wonder why you're feeling so blue and so down? It's because you were meant for something greater. Here's a radioactive spider. Go make your choice.
Yeah, it's basically, the pitch is basically, what if Spider-Man as midlife crisis, sort of, where like it's a version of the world where he never was bitten as a teenager, and he is not like unhappy with his marriage or his life. He's just like you said, something's missing, and then somebody shows up and says, maybe this is the missing piece. And you know, I think the first issue makes it clear that he goes for it, but as of yet, only issue 1 is out. It's possible as of this recording that the second issue is out this week. I don't know. But yeah.
It's due out. If not the day this episode comes out, it's due out relatively soon, before the end of February.
Yeah. But I'm a big Jonathan Hickman fan, and I have affection for the Ultimate Universe, even though it's like a very different take on it than the one we're used to. So I was really into that first issue. I was really into it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm very excited to see what they do with Ultimate Black Panther as well. Matt, you got any more what you doings?
No. Nope.
All right. Well, do you want to plug the Discord and we'll get out of here?
Sure. Yeah. Discord is, we have a Discord. It's a cool place to come hang out. If you like what we do here on mic and you just want to mix it up via text, that's a good spot for it. Come hang out.
And you can find us on all social media platforms at Talking Smack Pod. That includes Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, Hive Social, Post News, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Lonnie's website. You can email us your thoughts, questions, what you doings at tsmackpod@gmail.com. Alex, who's remixing our theme?
Petri Alanko, fresh off of Alan Wake 2. Matt pulled in the big request and got it to do it.
Up my fists.
Thank you to Leo Allen for our musical themes, Beppo for our original avatars, Retro AL Studios for our Ricky avatar. Please like, subscribe, rate, review on your podcatcher of choice. And most importantly, thank you again so much for listening. And everyone, take care. We will see you next week.
You gotta say it, Matt. Don't disappoint your Legion.
I can't say it with the music blasting over me.
I can fix it in post.
Alright, watch Star Trek, Josh, specifically. Watch it. No, actually, Leo Allen, watch Star Trek, Deep Space Nine.
Shut up, Happy. Don't feel bad about me. I got my hand back, see? We've only just begun to live. White lace and promises, a kiss for luck, and we're all